I just work here. I'm just trying to figure out where the coolness is. And, I was told that, the George W. Bush era, like log cabin Republicans, I was told that's very MAGA. So, I can't keep track. You gotta.
Hold on, Daniel. We're starting the show.
I'm trying to be a good soldier.
Hold on, Daniel.
Hold on. He's going. We got to hold him off. We got to begin the show.
I'm trying to be a good soldier.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to Cross Politics on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. It's good to be with you. We got a fireball coming on the show, Daniel Horowitz, to talk about Idaho Republican primaries. We're going to talk about that.
Can we talk about this song right now?
What song is this?
This is one of those.
Where's the words? Where's the words?
Gabe talked over the whole thing.
Yeah.
I did?
Yeah, you did. It's talking about the fat is the Lord's.
It is the fruit of the offering.
What is this? The fruit of the offering. The sweet savor. The fat is the Lord's.
This is like the same genre of like Jesse's Girl.
Yeah.
I wish I had Jesse's Girl.
It's like you got rickrolled by Leviticus.
Yes. I love it. More of this, Carter.
That is awesome, Toby.
More rickrolling by
You just made my day.
Leviticus. That is it.
Hey, folks, ever heard of the true team model in real estate? I hadn't until I came across Story Real Estate. Owners Chris and Natalie founded the original specialized team here in Moscow, Idaho, and the Palouse region. It's not just individual agents under one brand. They've got experts in place for every step of the process: marketing, negotiation, transaction management, everything. So if you have questions about real estate, they're your team. Head to storyrealestate.com. That's storyrealestate.com. Mount Athos.
Oh, we got two.
Performance was created to support your quest for excellence in body, mind, and soul. Here on the Holy Mountain, we believe that true strength is not measured in gains, but rather in pursuing anti-fragile longevity, mental resilience, and a rejection of the soul-destroying hedonism of the modern fitness culture. From energizing pre-workouts to muscle-building protein, Mount Athos Performance has everything you need to supplement the holistic foundation of authentic strength and vitality you are building. These supplements also uniquely feature the historic goodness of grass-fed goat whey made in the Pacific Northwest. Visit athosperform.com/FLF today to discover supplements built on purity, sustainability, and the pursuit of excellence. That's athosperform.com/FLF. We're grateful to have with us on the show today Daniel Horowitz. He's the host of Conservative Review with Daniel Horowitz and senior editor for The Blaze News. Daniel, thanks for coming back on Cross Politic.
Hey, great to be back with you guys.
So, Daniel, it's the Idaho primaries today. You've actually released a video, about a 5-minute video on the Idaho primaries. You're somehow engaged and invested in what we're doing here. You retweeted Heather Scott, who's a good friend of our show here in Idaho.
You care about Idaho, Daniel? Wow.
And to me, so I grew up in Texas, where there's like 50 million people in Texas. Very big state. Very, I'd say, not as strategic as Idaho.
Yeah. Why?
In the sense that, Idaho's, because Idaho's only got 2 million people, highly conservative, or supposed to be, as we'll talk about, Daniel, highly conservative, but it's also, I think, easy to move. You try to move 2 million people in a direction versus 50 million people in a direction, you're like, herding cats. But the interesting thing also about Idaho is whoever wins the Idaho primaries in May today is going to pretty much be a guaranteed Republican winner in November.
Yeah.
That would be true for the governor, the lieutenant governor, the AG, a lot of statewide.
Primaries kind of decide a lot of it.
Primaries kind of decide. And then, Daniel, you probably know this too, is like the amount of voters that turn out for Idaho primaries is minuscule to the amount of voters that actually turn out for the November primaries, when basically the vote's already decided.
Right.
So we got all these Idaho voters that show up in November to elect a governor. Well, that election, actually, the real election happened in May.
Right.
And so our voter turnout is super low in the primaries, which means that, let's say, I think it takes like 200,000 votes to get a governor elected, or to win the primaries, the Republican primaries in May. About 200,000 votes. The state, which is, if there's 2 million people in Idaho, 200,000 votes in the primaries, you got 10% of the voters deciding what happens in November.
Yeah.
So, Daniel, is that kind of I think my guess is one of the reasons why you're so invested in Idaho primaries and the Idaho election is because you kind of see it the way I see it, where it's kind of a strategic Republican state.
I mean, it's basically May 21st, the most important elections of our lifetime. Who's saying that? But it is. And here's why. It's both Idaho strategically, but also what it represents. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I'm so interested is because I'm in Maryland, which is a mirror image of Idaho in the other direction.
Yeah.
Where, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to get out of there. Where do I live? Well, okay, I'll move to a red state. But then, Idaho is a state where there are potentially tons of tailwinds that we can pick up on. Mm-hmm. But if we don't, we can't do this anywhere. There are people fleeing, just like a lot of Marylanders are going to Florida. A lot of people from California, Oregon, Washington are fleeing to Idaho only to find out that, oh, whoops. I mean, okay, the guns are a little better, maybe a little bit more, anti-abortion and, photo ID for elections. Mm-hmm. But at its core, the culture, the fiscal and social values of the state agencies, the Department of Education, Department of Health, that is not going to be there for me to interpose against what the feds are doing. I mean, I cannot live this life. We still have COVID fascism there. We have biomedical tyranny. We have the tranny agenda in the public school system. We still have agencies that are not just not tooled like in Florida to be a force for good for conservative values, but downright still promoting everything you would see in California. So, everyone's like, hey, Daniel, you got to move. And I'm going to move at some point, but I'm only going to move once and I want to make it count. And it would be tragic. I know so many people that move only to find out that it's Tweedledee Tweedledum. So, the thing with Idaho is, like you said, it's a pretty homogenous state. It's a small state. And if we can't win there, we can't win anywhere. Now, there's another reason why I believe this is our Waterloo. Because we've been losing almost every primary. Okay, I mean, let me just say that straight. I have never seen a time.
Republicans are winning a lot of primaries. Who's we?
We. Okay, so let me define we.
Yeah.
Never has there been a time where there has been such unified thought and articulation in conservative media that there is a fake Republican Party, a uniparty. They're worthless. They're betraying us every day. But bizarrely, it's unfolding right as we are having primaries of these very people, state by state. And to conservative media, my colleagues, it's as if it doesn't exist. And then they're like, everything is Trump. But Trump is endorsing every single rhino. Not even every single incumbent, because there's some good incumbents he's not endorsing.
Like
some good
Thomas
he does.
Massey.
It's hit or miss. So today you have Georgia, Kentucky, and Idaho. To my knowledge, the only incumbent he's not endorsing is Massey. Now, here's the thing. Trump's always been, rather than, and again, I mean, I don't care what you think of him broadly, this is a fact you can't deny. Rather than draining the swamp, since he came on the scene, he has been, for every one race that he's a help down the ballot, he's endorsing the bad guys, 5 to 10 other times. Yeah. But this cycle, he took it up another notch. It used to be that, if you could align his personal beefs that he sometimes has with some people with our strategic interests, then you could get some good stuff out of it. So some of these guys would say bad things about Trump. Will be like, hey, look what he's saying. So he'll come in and endorse someone better.
Yeah.
What's happening now is that this is not a matter of, the Lindsey Graham sort of thing where he shouldn't have that relationship, but he does. So you kind of, even though we disagree with it, but we kind of get it.
Yeah.
Here, it's people like Mike Simpson who have been antagonistic to him forever, never had a relationship. I don't even know if he asked for endorsement. He is now endorsing people that hate him. Mm-hmm. There's no relationship there. Mm-hmm. It's one after another. And, it's not just about Trump, but about all of us in totality. Well, if we're not going to voice displeasure and pressure Trump to get off of these bad endorsements, we're not going to focus ourselves on these, how the heck could you change the party if you don't change the party? I mean, we swore up and down, these guys need to be primary. I'm sick of the Ukraine and the open borders and this and that. And then you literally have the Super Bowl where you have candidates to varying degrees, legislature, governor in some states, and Congress in every state. And so far, not a single bad incumbent has gone down in Congress. Not one.
Right.
Not one. Okay, regardless of what they've done, voted for the omnibuses, voted for the Ukraine betrayal, all this stuff, and usually by wide margins. And at some point, it's like what we're doing is not working. A lot of our people are consumed with voter fraud, discussions of voter fraud.
Yeah.
But the biggest voter fraud is red state primaries. Okay, I mean,
all right, Daniel, I gotta hold you there because we're gonna go on a break here, a commercial break, real quick, and then we're gonna come back with a video on kind of this Mike Simpson Rhino campaign donations when we come back from break. So hang around.
The greatest
we'll be
election
back.
fraud is the red states.
Red state primaries.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What we believe as Christians is that Jesus is Lord over everything, that he is the way, the truth, and the life. All things are made by him and through him, and therefore his creation reflects that.
Everything that we're learning about, whether it's science or math or history, literature, there are transcendental truths that show themselves through all those subjects.
I love showing my students the connections between how God sovereignly has ordered all the subjects to glorify him, whether that's through how math, all the numbers work together perfectly. He's an orderly God, or through orthography in the written word. He gave us his word in the form of the Bible, and I try to encourage my students that they can glorify God by learning to read well.
They're talking about the teeny tiny parts of the cell and how does that even fit in the stem of a plant. And I'm able to say, well, our creator God, who pays attention to every single detail, planned it that way. And that's why it is the way it is.
I think we're distinctly marked as Christian because we're going to God's word and we're praying and starting our day with that. And I think starting the day with that is very important.
We pray in our classroom. When we have issues with students, we have them pray together and encourage each other in that way. So I would say that we see, just as we build their character, that we're putting Christ at the center.
God certainly expects a lot of us, and it's not a bad thing that he does, and by his grace he helps us. And so we want to pair high expectations with a loving care for each one of our students and a willingness to come alongside them and push them and encourage them to live up to those standards.
It's challenging academically, but it's also challenging in we want them to be wise, eloquent, virtuous young men and women. So we're looking for mature in heart and mind.
I think it's a character building and sanctifying to kind of be in and over your head a little bit because they have to face a fear they have in themselves that maybe they're not good enough or inadequate in some way. And to be able to prove that wrong over and over and over again has been, I think, one of the biggest areas of growth that I've seen.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Cross Politic. We have Daniel Horowitz with us. Fireball Daniel Horowitz. You get him going. He's like the Energizer Bunny.
Nuclear bomb.
Nuclear bomb. So we're talking kind of Idaho primaries today. What's going on kind of in the rhino culture in the Republican Party. Daniel, just before we went on break, said, what'd he say about the Idaho primaries?
He said the greatest voter fraud is happening
red primaries.
in red primaries.
Yeah.
Red primaries.
So we're going to have him flesh that out. But what I want to show you guys is, so our Congressman, Mike Simpson, he's been around for decades. We've ran candidates after candidates against him every primary.
And Donald Trump
just endorsed him. But here's this clip I want to show you from all the liberals and liberal companies that have donated tens of thousands of dollars to his campaign.
Okay.
Go. Bill Gates.
Wait a second.
We're getting clowned. So Daniel, flesh out your comments. And why are Idaho or red primaries the biggest voter fraud scheme going on right now?
You just answered it with that video, and that's emblematic of this. See, Mike Simpson is not even ambiguous about what he does. Some of them are careful. They vote the right way, but subvert us quietly. I mean, this guy, again, full spectrum leftist, the biggest spender alive. There's not a single thing in the federal budget he wants to be cut, including this record demonic inflationary level spending, gay marriage, DACA, endless, amnesty, endless third world, people coming in. No problem with that. We need the labor. So what happens is that when I got into this 15 years ago, I thought, oh, it's easy. Just go to primaries. Okay. There's more of us than them in the Republican Party because otherwise they'd be Democrats. So we just have this philosophical debate about the direction we want the party to go in, and we'll easily win. But then I realized what happens. They get all that money from the special interest precisely because they're going to do the opposite, and they do the opposite, but then they turn around and use that money. And especially when there's a Democrat in the White House, they're like, Biden sucks. And yeah, we fight the Democrats, Mike Simpson up there fighting for Idaho values, protecting you from DC. So who wins? The guy who has the most money and name ID to say what a great conservative he is. Well, who is that guy? 9 out of 10 times, the guy with the most money, and 9 out of 10 times, that guy's the biggest dirtbag that's doing the opposite. And this is the fraud. I don't know what you do if you have a party that hates its voters so much that it's willing to utterly lie to them about who they are, indulge their talking points, turn around, do the opposite.
Right.
I don't know how you sort that out. And, again, this plays out in every single primary. There's not a single one. Let me explain something to you, how severe this is. In Maryland, okay, no Republican could ever win. Now, they think this is an anomaly where Larry Hogan, who was governor for 8 years, could somehow win as a Republican. Mm-hmm. Now, this guy is even to the left of Mike Simpson, if you can imagine that.
Wow.
Now, in Maryland, you can imagine, okay, so there's no Republican Party. So he just walks into a primary. The primary is not the thing, it's the general. But nonetheless, there's no threat of him losing. He sent out mailers, and I was like, I've never seen this Larry Hogan. Man, he is the border and all the things we talk about. Then, a day later, he wins the primary. A day later, we need to bring back Roe v. Wade. He's running ads on that. So this is a little different dynamic in Maryland. But the point is, even there, where he almost didn't even have to do it, they lie to primary voters. And I've been struggling with this for 15 years. And, we needed Trump to come in and endorse our guys to be that force multiplier for people who lack the money and name ID to challenge the system. But instead, again, 9 times out of 10, best case scenario, he stays out, but usually he goes in for the wrong guy. So at some point, we need to step back and ask ourselves, how are we going to change things if, despite everything people like Mike Simpson have done, they're going to continue to breeze to renomination with Trump's support? How in the world are you going to change everything? And one more point on Trump. There's a lot of talk about it's not Trump's fault, right? So these dirtbag Republicans, they come in there and they lie to him and they trick him and they fool him. All right, let's just, accept that kind of an interesting talking point, given the stature and regard that you hold this, all-powerful, amazing man. But okay, fine. So then all the more so, you have an obligation to bring reinforcements, meaning last time it was like Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy got him to sign stupid omnibus bills. Now, I'll tell you, Stephen Mnuchin, his Treasury Secretary, wrote them initially, but okay, it's fine. All right, I can play the game, But so then let's get better guys in there. But then he comes in and pulls up the ladder from our guys. What are you going to do? How will you change it? Mike Johnson's going to stay speaker. It's now becoming clear with Trump's support. If Trump does win, he will be speaker. Mm-hmm. John Thune or John Cornyn, which is just a younger version of McConnell, will be majority leader. Down the ballot, we're not moving the needle. We're actually losing some Freedom Caucus guys. Mm-hmm. What are we changing?
So if I understand you, first of all, let me say something to you, Daniel. keep the great one's name out your mouth, first of all.
The great one?
Who's the great one?
Trump. You know what I'm saying? You keep Trump's name out your mouth.
We'll call him the magic orange, okay? It was just like, with COVID, we couldn't say vaccine.
Yeah.
So you have to say the magic juice.
Yeah.
So
that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's okay.
so that's when we do the magic orange. It's like, Johnson just like got Trump to support Ukraine. Like, how dare he do that?
But so are you really saying though? Because a lot of people are looking at this next election, and be like, Trump's the only option. Are you really saying, look, no Trump, don't do Trump, don't vote Trump?
No. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm sick of hearing that. I'm like on the verge of profanity, and it's nothing personal to you, just because it's so obvious. There's a third option. You know what that's called? Gently. It's called being a movement. Gently urging and voicing displeasure with your guy. It works wonders. Ironically, I'm the one who gives Trump more credit than any of these other people. They're like, seemingly it's hopeless, just let him do what he wants. I'm like, no, Trump does care about what his base thinks. He has shown that. But if you don't voice your displeasure, see, this is not November 1st. This is not October 15th. And I've been saying this for months, when it was like 8-10 months out from the election. Now is the time to sort this out. Now is the time to say, hey, buddy, you're moving to the left on Obamacare. You move to the left on tranny stuff. You move to the left on certainly abortion. You move to the left on Ukraine.
Right.
You're making all these bad endorsements. You're saving Johnson. Like, what the heck? Something is going wrong here. Let's stop that. You would need to do that, whether it's DeSantis, whether it's anyone else. You cannot worship someone. The point of having access that all these Mar-a-Lago people take their selfies for should be to have influence.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the point. It doesn't mean you have to not vote for him over Biden. That's a different decision. But we have this notion. And I want to move away from Trump because it's relevant to the state legislative elections in Idaho and the other things. But we have this notion that we live in perpetuity with that 5-second decision on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November every 4 years of, what do I do? Some Republicans better than some Democrats. Let's put that on a shelf. But there's every hour and day in between that you have to raise your voice, get involved in the legislative sessions, get involved in the primaries, start voicing your displeasure. You don't have to throw yourself at them. Get them on your plantation, not the other way around. This was true before Trump with Romney and McCain and Bush and all these other guys. But, it certainly doesn't end with him. I mean, I don't know. It's such a simple idea. Like, shh. 10 months before, no. We can't say anything because somehow if internally we voice displeasure, somehow the Democrats are going to win. I'm sick of but the Democrat, we get the Democrat anyway.
We saw the same thing actually during COVID with we talked to the state legislators in South Dakota when we did a rally there.
Yeah, that's right.
And they were telling us about Kristi Noem,
right,
and pointing out that like actually behind the scenes, like she went on this, she went
primaried all the Freedom Caucus guys. Yeah,
she went on this like victory parade of like I didn't shut us down, and behind the scenes, the legislators were like, actually, we told her she was not allowed to shut us down
because she wanted to.
Because she actually wanted to. And so there was a lot of pressure being exerted on her to do the right thing, and she did. And so I think that you're making a really good point.
I think so too.
We don't understand how important it is to exert that friendly pressure, like we're here. We talked about this even during the COVID stuff.
Reagan appreciated that. It happened during his time. And you always need that. You always need that because remember, the inertia is only in one direction. You saw that litany of special interest money. We are our best advocates. We are our only advocates. We don't have anyone but ourselves. And the bottom line is we think the die is cast the minute you press that. It's not. I mean, every day there are policy decisions, whether it's in media, whether it's on the floor of the legislature, whether it's off season, when they're at a session exposing what the Idaho Department of Education, Department of Health are doing. I mean, these are the sorts of things we all need to do. And the more you have that synergistic approach of grooming primary challengers while you're focusing and exposing the legislative sessions, that's how you build a movement. And I just want to move to a positive that I hope will be a positive. The reason why I think Idaho is almost like a Waterloo is because until now we've had weak infrastructure in the state so far. Indiana, Ohio, there's nothing. There's just nothing there. I mean,
right.
You have GOP supermajorities, but there's almost not a single conservative in Idaho and in the Indiana legislature, and we don't have much infrastructure.
Yeah.
This is the first state, and along with Georgia a little bit today, where we have a Freedom Caucus that has been put in place.
Yeah.
We have allied outside groups. So it's not just kind of one or two random guys with no name challenging incumbents. You have a whole slate, a whole movement, and this will be very, very telling. And that's why it's so important that, look, the people are very complacent. But Steve Deace and I have this debate all the time. Is it mainly the people's fault, or is it more of a Burkean approach that we lack conservative media and leadership like the left has in their primaries to guide people on, you wouldn't know what Kristi Noem was doing. You wouldn't know. A lot of people don't know what Brad Little does. And that's fine. But if you're involved in politics, you should know this stuff. And if you call yourself a conservative thought leader with X million iTunes subscribers, will actually own up to that responsibility and know about this stuff. People think, oh, Daniel, well, not everyone's as clever as you. I've heard that before. That should be baseline. Oh, wow, you know about Idaho, you know about this. Well, yeah, I'm making my business because, we got to change things. And the question is, where you do have the Freedom Foundation and you have, Dorothy Moon as the chairman of the party, which we don't have too many like that. Yeah. And you have some infrastructure in place. You have a Freedom Caucus that forced a lot of roll call votes, then put out a scorecard, and then build the candidates. You should be very proud of that. That is a movement. The results are for God, but ultimately you have to do your part. You can't just sit home, watch Fox News, butt the Democrats, and then tune out, and then only turn out in the general election. Right. And then to the extent you go to a primary, hey, what's the first name I know? Hey, I hate the incumbents. Politics is terrible. Mike Simpson. That's right. Okay, Mike Simpson. Yeah, that's great.
Right.
You can't keep doing this.
Oh my!
So Daniel, I maybe this is a little bit what you're getting at too, but there's some calculations that don't add up to me in what's going on in the Republican Party right now. Especially, I think it's most clear, I think, with our Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, where just right when he got elected, he was coming off like this Christian prince of America in some ways, and
hanging out with Ken Ham at the Ark Encounter. Yeah,
and then praying in Congressional Hall with staff around him or other congressmen around him, and then within weeks, he I don't know, they got pornography pictures on him or something, but all of a sudden, his calculations and the way he was talking
and voting
and how he was working more with the Democratic Party than the Republican Party as Speaker of the House. Explain that to me.
Seems like a flip.
What calculations are going on there?
So it's funny. I have a different take than everyone because I think that's a little bit too convenient. People think our base is primed to think everything's a fraud, everything's stolen, everything's, and there's definitely clear frauds, and we talk about people who lie. But then there's another thing too that, and this is so important, and I'm not getting paid to do this, but I'm going to put on a commercial for the Idaho Freedom Caucus. This is why the state Freedom Caucuses are so important. You have a lot of people that are decent human beings. They live conservative Christian lives themselves personally. And if we were at the top of that mountain, right, chucking the boulders down on the bad guys, not the other way around, so they'd be right there with us. They're not going to certainly get in our way, and they would be part of that vote. Mm-hmm. But so long as we're not in charge, okay, and it's the bad guys in charge, they're not willing to there's a very limited number of leverage points you have to change the game. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of guys, okay, quietly, they just want to vote the right way. Mind you, he was never really like that. I mean, he voted for the debt ceiling increase before he was speaker. It was always very superficial with him. Mm-hmm. He's not even a good example of this because it was just when it's easy. We're all good without adversity. Mm. But because we think, oh, you're a fraud. We have to understand it's not easy to govern conservatively. I don't think people understand that. Yeah. There's a way of doing it, and we kind of have a certain model that we vividly see that for some reason we don't want to learn from, or sometimes downright repudiate and reject. But it's not so simple that you could just get people like that, because there's a reason the inertia is in that direction. It's not necessarily someone has porn, photos of you or stuff in your pockets directly with money, like a direct bribe. But it is a certain groupthink inertia. And to a large degree, Trump got caught up in this because, he'd be caught up by, the stock market's going to crash if we do this. Right. It's too disruptive. He's a very stability guy. It's funny. Yeah. People look at his rhetoric, his decorum is very unique. But his way, he's actually very much, dare I say, establishment way of thinking. And I understand it, but nothing's going to change. You have to have a heart, a soul, and a brain. You have to have all that. You have to understand the issues, be able to articulate your way out of it. A lot of times Trump would get up there and he wanted to do the right thing, but he didn't really understand the issue that well. So all these guys come in, whether it's the generals with certain military things or, this is not feasible, Mr. President. Here's what would happen. And they're very good at superficially. It sounds nice. DeSantis was the type of guy that's able to, with the Disney thing, they thought he'd back down. He knows the issues. He put in personnel that's, not just values based, and not just like Daniel Horowitz, talk show host, blurting out, but actually under, anyone could be a talk show host. You know that we have more conservative talk show hosts than ever. Anyone could do that behind a microphone. Yeah. We're all amazing, but it's not so simple to be able to finesse that. And that's why the Freedom Caucus is so important, because they understand it's not just good enough to, be relegated to a permanent minority. We're going to have our hands clean, not vote for the bad stuff, but we're not going to actively treat the Republicans like the Democrats and filibuster, use procedural motions to force votes, campaign against them, because you got to change it. And there's a lot of guys like, whoa, I'm not down for that. I'm a conservative, and I understand that, but you're not going to change anything. So that, and then also you need a cohesiveness. Iron sharpens iron. The fear factor goes down when you have a cohesive group with staff, with, an outside ground game. And they're the first movement that I've seen that's trying to address why we are where we are. You can't just view it statically. Like A versus B, he must be a fraud. Let me go find a better guy. Well, in a static analysis, you're not going to find too much. You have to build it. It takes a movement. We're all looking for this is the baby boomer Fox News mentality. We sit back and wait. Every 4 years, the silent majority will rise up and all invested in whoever that Republican nominee is at that point for president. It's the school boards, it's the legislature, it's all of it, and you got to have a movement. It doesn't come naturally. The way the left 10 to 15 years ago got the tranny agenda into all 3,000 counties like in 6 months. Yeah. It didn't happen by accident. They have agitators, and that's even where they're in the minority. Like in Idaho, technically in the minority. Right. We can't even harness where the broad majority agree with us. And we get outrun by these guys. And my concern is that I'm seeing a tremendous amount of apathy and laziness, that we've gone backwards since the Tea Party. We've lost all the gains. And it's just like, it's all. And again, this is if Trump were amazingly principled, amazingly articulate, amazingly focused, we would still need to be doing this. You're never going to fix this with just one man at the top. The Idaho primaries matter so much more. If you're an Idaho resident, you got to understand that you got to look at what happened in Trump's first term, and you got to understand that there's serious limitations of what to expect. And that's assuming he wins. Remember, there's still a very good chance he doesn't win. That's just a reality. It's certainly not a given. What the primaries are doing here is that if you can get a Freedom Caucus adjacent majority in the legislature, you could have that bulwark that if things don't go well, when they start rounding people up and they take the weaponization to the next level, and you have biomedical fascism And then you have the bankruptcy problems, and we really need to work on currency and states finding innovative ways with currency, how to shield people from this just unlivable inflation. All these issues, illegal immigration, states are going to have to, unilaterally enforce. There's a lot of things we want to do, but it will never, ever happen under the current crop.
Okay, so Daniel, there's two, because I know you're going to go on a rampage for like another 30 minutes with one question. I'm going to ask two.
I'll put a timer on.
You're going to put two in?
I'm going to throw two because I'm going to let them wind up to the next one. I guess as you were talking, one of the questions is, it seems we have more rhinos than they have dinos, right? And as you were talking, I feel like, a lot of people say we've got Republicans, but it doesn't seem like this happens on the other side as much, or we're not even aware of it, where they're like, oh my goodness, we got a Democrat who's really a Republican in office. Like, you know what I mean? It seems like it's always falling on us, where we have the weakest link all the time. I would love to know where the dinos are. Are they even out there?
They're extinct.
Or does the other side do a good job of lynching their dinos? Just wondering.
Yeah.
That's question number one.
That's question number one. And the question number two is, what happens, if with Simpson's, Mike Simpson, right?
Yep,
if he is put back in office, what is the outcome? What's the domino play of that moving forward? What does that look like for Idaho moving forward?
Sure. No, I mean, this is really important. So you're getting to the original sin of politics. Okay. Why do we have this dichotomy between the two parties? You're asking the right man, because Maryland is, again, a mirror image of Idaho.
Right.
So you would think, wait a minute. Well, Maryland's a one-party state, so why don't we have Republicans, running as Democrats and living out their agenda vicariously through Democrats? Like, shouldn't we see the opposite? Certainly we don't see that. It's demonic as hell here. You don't find just think about Mike Simpson. Just think about Mike Simpson for a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Just think about core national issues: pro-gay marriage, pro-open borders, pro every spending program imaginable. So where is the equivalent Democrat? The answer is there is not a single, not one. The only difference you'll find is a little bit with mannerism sometimes, and just being a little bit more subtle. But to downright take the Republican view on a series of critical issues, it doesn't exist. And I'm going to give you the most vivid illustration of this. In Maryland, we just had a Senate primary with Democrats, and a lot of Republicans were laughing, and they thought this was funny, and they learned the wrong lesson. So this guy, David Trone, is a congressman from Maryland. There's an open Senate seat. So you can imagine you have an open blue seat. There's going to be a lot of, Democrats vying for it. So this guy bought himself the airways, pretty small state, more expensive than Idaho, but small state, $62 million in TV ads. Just he's a very wealthy guy, independently wealthy, just flooded the zone. I mean, that's all you saw. And people were shocked that they came to election night and, this kind of grassroots, pro-Hamas BLM type, won, and not just like close, but by 13 points. Like, whoa, I mean, she was outspent, 10-1 or something. And the answer is they have a movement, we have an industry. They have a movement, we have an industry. So when you have a movement, they're like, hey, David Trone, you're not going to force your guys on our primary guy. Now, mind you, David Trone has a 2% Heritage Action score, right? He's a total leftist. There's not a single issue he dissents, but he's not going to walk around. He's a white male. He doesn't give off the vibe. He's wealthy. He doesn't give off the vibe of like someone defecating on a police car or the guys on the campuses he doesn't give off that vibe. But even though he'll be totally into the, we need to support Gaza or whatever. But no, they wanted someone who just really just like goes all out, no self-awareness. So just like, someone with the Palestinian flag. This is a woman also, Brooks, who won. And they have the organizations, the NGOs, and the ground game. And they had a mail-in ballot. By the way, this is going to be a microcosm of what's going to happen with R versus D in the general. They swamped the guy with the mail-ins, and they got their guy in. And again, it's David Trone was not a Democrat Mike Simpson. Yeah. He is down the line, but he's just not like openly demonic about certain things. It's like, he's not going to say Israel shouldn't exist. That's kind of where the Democrat base is. That's like a new frontier that's pretty recent. Yeah. That's where the nominee that they got. And we don't have that. We do. You guys are you guys are ahead of most other states in building that on the right in Idaho, and I give you guys a lot of credit, and that's why I'm highlighting it. But I will tell you that the problem is the original sin, and the reason is that their grassroots could swim in concert with the moneyed interests. For us, we have to work again. There's no money in sovereignty, security, civil society, traditional values. It's abstract. There's no money in that.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no, and this is the problem. So, when you're on the left, you're an entrepreneuring law school student and you want to go and agitate for, the trannies and balls cutting and illegals or whatever, Hamas, whatever you want to do. So there's an endless litany of Soros-funded, Ford Foundation, NGOs that they have smart people. They could go in there and, okay, here's, $200,000 salary, swing for the fences. So I'm good. I know I can support myself. And now I just fight for a cause. Yeah. On our side, in my industry, everyone's got to eat and you got to earn your keep because there's no free money.
Right.
So you have to find some way of trying to make that money. Well, as you well know, it doesn't always conflict, but it certainly doesn't work with and often conflicts with values. So right now, to tie this in, right now, if you had a movement, what would be good for the movement is for people to sit down with Trump and kind of read him the ride out. Like, hey, what the heck, guy? You're sliding too quickly. You got to remember we're here. But if it's an industry and you need to make money, out of the people on the top 20 on the iTunes list, who's going to want to do that? Okay, you know what I mean? It's not good for business.
Right.
And I'm just telling you why we are where we are. Right. So the domino effect is we keep electing people like Mike Simpson, and the domino effect is that even if Trump wins and they get a trifecta, nothing will change because Mike Johnson, just the dirty little secret, I'm not defending him, but is a reflection of the majority of people there. That's the reality. Mm-hmm. The Mike Simpson, I think they call it the Tuesday Group. That's like the Rhino Freedom Caucus. They have about twice as many members of the Freedom Caucus. So these are the people that are to the left of leadership.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's what you have. And even from an R+14 district, you have that in spades. You have that the North Dakota and South Dakota at-large congressmen are part of that group. Utah, we got a bunch of these people. And what's going to happen is we can't have a government shutdown no matter what. So no matter what, we can't risk government shutdown, can't risk a debt ceiling. We can't risk having any reauthorization bill lapse. So, you tell me where we go. That's the domino effect. And how do I know this? Because we lived through it. And we're always told that these rhinos have a way of convincing Trump. Well, if you want to put it that way, so they'll continue doing the convincing. And, so you basically get, and by the way, I didn't even get to the Senate. The Senate GOP makes the House GOP look like the founding fathers. So,
I can't
that's a whole nother.
Stop it.
That's if you get it past the House.
I can't.
I'm sorry. I could lie to you and tell you it's self-executing.
Lie to me.
But I'm not done yet.
Lie to me. I want the lies. Right. Plug me back in the Matrix, man. I want to go back.
Well, I think that's what. Yeah, but you don't have gray hair there, so you're not the baby boomer Fox News listeners that want to hear this. I think you want to hear something new, so you don't want to be lied to.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
And the bottom line is,
hang on just a second.
What are we left with?
I'm gonna come right back to you. I need to read this ad. Otherwise, we're never gonna get to it. There's 3 things you need to know about 1689 cigars.
They're amazing. They're amazing. They're amazing.
You guys don't know, but I'm an owner in it now.
When you purchase from 16,
what? Yeah.
You didn't offer us to come in with you on that?
You're distracted. When you purchase from 1689cigars.com,
Gabe gets money.
You help feed small ranch children, provide jobs, and folks in Nicaragua who would otherwise have very difficult time providing for their families.
My kids need to eat too.
And they reduce the handouts. Maybe move to Nicaragua. Every time you enjoy.
That didn't play well, bro. That's not going to age well.
Every time you enjoy products from 1689cigars.com, you support Reformed church planters in Nicaragua. And 1689cigars.com is owned and operated by bivocational pastors here in the U.S. who resonate with Pastor Charles Spurgeon when he said, I intend to smoke a good cigar to the glory of God before I go to bed tonight. 1689cigars.com is honored to partner with Reformed Cigars by selling all the blends and sizes available from Reformed Cigars. Whether your palate prefers a full-bodied Maduro, a mild Connecticut, or somewhere in between, 1689cigars.com has a blend for you. While shopping at 1689cigars.com, check out their great t-shirts, stickers, glasses, and more, and be sure to check out back regularly as they're adding new products all the time. 1689cigars.com. Smoke to the glory of God. Hold on.
Yeah.
I read, so I get to ask the next question.
All right.
Daniel, you said you said this a couple times. I think you said there is a way to govern conservatively, but nobody wants to do it. And I think you've thrown it out there a few times. You've implied a few things, like I think you're saying like government shutdowns and things like that is what is really necessary to govern conservatively. But can you flesh that out? Can you tell? I mean, if you can talk,
tell us what to do.
Talk to Dorothy Moon. You can talk to the
Heather Scott,
the Freedom Caucus here in Idaho. Heather Scott, Scott Herndon, some of our other buddies who are trying to do this. What does governing conservatively look like in Idaho in particular?
So obviously there's two different things. Government shutdown was more the leverage at a federal level. When I was talking about states, I was talking about more like Florida is an example of, where you would think if you could do it in Florida, by golly, you should be able to do it in Idaho, it's very parallel to Florida, where they're probably the two states that have the biggest percentage of conservative refugees coming, one in the West, one in the East. But the difference is, I would argue, Idaho started out much better. Remember, Florida is a very diverse state, lots of big urban areas, the third largest state in the country. And it was the consummate swing state until recently. And he was able to floor the gas pedal and then win and move the state over. And one of the things he did is that he destroyed. See, this is what owning the libs actually is. He destroyed their power base. What the left does is they use policy to build voters, right? Whether it's the dependency, whether it's the teachers union. He just destroyed. He had it in mind 3 different power sources that they have, and he destroyed each one of them. So it's not just that he's doing good things. The values are getting better. The economy is getting better. Healthcare, education. You got Latipo out there. Like just today, you have a major Sarasota hospital that's now voting to adopt Latipo's position on the vaccines. I mean, can you imagine a hospital in Idaho? The hospitals are terrible, red state, blue state, and they all buy into it. That's why he changed the culture. Now, I don't want to pour cold water on hopefully what should be an amazing legislative election, but you really do ultimately need a governor. And what I would advise you guys is that if you have one star to run in a state, don't waste him by running him for Senate. That thing is over. That thing is done. I mean, there's 3 conservatives in that chamber. You're never going to run governor. You get governor. What DeSantis has shown is you really need the governor. That is the most important position in America. We should have 20 DeSantis plus and build on that and grow that. Again, putting the presidential election aside, remember, this is why Idaho is so important, because like I just told you, we're not going to accomplish much. I didn't finish that thought that the rest you can do is Trump executive orders, but the courts have shown that they'll mess with most of them too. That's a whole nother issue. And then again, remember, there's a good chance, there's a reason Republicans keep losing and Democrats keep winning, despite the economy, despite the fact that they're really rated unpopular on the issues. Some of that has to do with the GOP image and competence. Some of it has to do with the just sheer being outgunned in funding and ground game. And, obviously with this whole mail-in stuff, we have failed to build an apparatus to match them. The notion that you could assume he's going to win and then assume it's going to change, it's really very tenuous. And that's where it all comes back to where we started with May 21st. Today, this is building your vaccination, immunizing yourself to whatever will come, that whatever occurs, we have Republicans that are actually Republican that will try to keep Idaho as independent to interpose on behalf of the people against whatever tyranny either comes down or continues by hook or by crook at the federal level. And I think, as much as I'm upset about the Mike Simpson situation, I endorsed Brian Smith when he ran, I believe, in 2014.
Okay.
But I'm actually happy he chose to run for legislature. And everyone thinks I'm crazy, but I'm the only person that will take a guy that's thinking of running for federal office. I'll say, well, governor is the best, but if that's not feasible, not open, you could do more in a red state legislature than you're going to do there.
Right.
And that needs to be our focus, because we have a demographic problem. We have a values problem. We have an education problem. We have a Republican Party problem. So there's a limit to what we can win coming, 40 years into a fake GOP. A good part of the country is gone. Okay, that's a reality. I personally think the federal government also is irremediably broken as well. The best you can do is at least take the places that, even in the worst case scenario, that Trump gets crushed, he'll do very, very well in Idaho.
Right.
Okay, we know that no matter what.
Yeah.
He'll do very well in Idaho. So, like you said, you're going to run away with it in the general election. Now is the time to make it worthwhile, because you snooze, you lose. The minute you elect a Democrat in all but name only, you lose.
Yeah.
You lose that safety net in a red state that we need to create, and frankly, that so many people are fleeing to Idaho to enjoy.
Well, Daniel, you need to move to Idaho. We've had
Help us
move to Moscow. We live in Moscow, Idaho. That's where our studio's at. We'll build you a studio out here too.
Yeah.
And we've had about 300 or 400 people per year move from the Cal region, California, Oregon, and Washington in the last, since 2020.
Yeah.
So we're trying to fight in Idaho. Would love you to move here and join our church community and blow it up.
It's May 21st, y'all. And if you live in Idaho, you need to go out.
It's today. May 21st.
Yeah,
It's today.
Today.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
You're
It's
going
May-
out for this to vote.
It's May 21st. Go vote. Go vote today. It's the primaries. The primaries matter. They matter more than you think,
Especially in Idaho.
And you heard Daniel Horowitz. He called this our Waterloo.
Yeah.
He
shocking.
he says it's coming down to this. We got to fight here. You need to get out, find out who the real conservatives are, who the ones are who are really willing to risk what it takes to fight against the rhinos in particular. A Republican's probably going to win. The question, though, is it a real conservative or is it somebody who's just a rhino? Is it just somebody paid by the establishment for the status quo, which is ultimately
And by the Democrats.
Yeah,
Democrats donate to him, them too.
I think it was R.L. Dabney who said that conservatism is the shadow that follows progressivism.
Yeah.
I mean that's
Ouch.
unfortunately too often. I mean, he's writing in the 1890s, 1880s, and is already pointing that out. That's what we do over and over again. So
Because the public school system already been around for 60 years.
Yeah,
You already saw it.
Yeah, he was
see
seeing
it
it
coming.
federalized. Yeah.
Hey, Daniel, thank you so much for joining us here at Cross Politics. Appreciate you. I listen to you often. I'm always impressed with everything you have to say, man. Very grateful for you. Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. Looking forward to coming back.
All right. You're welcome to come back anytime in studio.
Serious.
Hey, if you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics.
Get out and vote.